From the world of AV programming and control with James King, I'm Steve Greenblatt, and this is Ask the Programmer. Hey, James, it's good to be back with you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, and as always, it's great to be with you, Steve. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm glad we have a fun and interesting topic. I think probably this is one of those things that you and I have connected on for some time, and we both seem to like to read, and both seem to like to look at the different sides that of being a AV professional that don't necessarily have to always do with AV or technology, and you know those, so that kind of leaves the professional part, which is professional development. How What are those soft skills? What are the things that we have, um, feel that is important for us to evolve and strengthen ourselves? So um, why don't we open up the conversation there? How important do you think, or what do you emphasis do you put on growing your professional development versus your technical development?
Um, I kind of lump them together, professional development with technical development, because anytime you are doing development and learning, you're improving yourself one way or another. Anyone who really follows me on Twitter knows, or X now, I'm a big one for using the hashtag always be learning. I'm always learning, trying to pick up things. And so you never know where you might get beneficial information and where that can help you in your career or even your job. So you want to balance your professional development between the technical, like, okay, this is how you repair a computer. Let's say that basic, and or this is how you configure a microphone, or this is how you write AV programming, but also into the soft skills as you were mentioning of like this is how to be a leader, and this is how to communicate with people or your end users or your handle situations or things like that. Those are all valuable traits that we can add to our tool belt as we grow.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, and I think it. A lot of people think that that's something that really is limited, or is the focus of people that more in management. But I'd argue that we all have to deal with people, and as you said, um, those skills are transferable. They're also valuable for day-to-day life. It's not just at work. And I mean, as you know, and we've talked a little bit about, I do a session on understanding personality types, and I just feel like it's incredibly beneficial and can be applied to so many different situations. But I'm always looking for what are the tips and tricks and perspectives, or those gems that will help me to work through different types of situations that may not be obvious, because I feel like my technical side of my brain has to also has to be exercised, as well as my non-technical side of my brain, and the two need to create a little bit of balance between them. And sometimes one gets weighted more than the other, but I think these ideas that we only need to worry about being good at our trade, I think is short-sighted in my opinion.
I agree. And let's even like kind of look at that. Recently, um, one of our employee here, who's our trainer, like he trains end users on how to use software and do certain things and all that stuff. He just completed the train the trainer course of HDI. And so he gave us the course to go through as an all IT coverage. And what was really interesting, and it could really help teams, is they got talking about how people troubleshoot. And there was four columns, and in the four column, you had a list, you go through them and list like the words that you kind of associate with how you troubleshoot things. And then I think it was like top, pick the 15. And then it was like, all right, find out where the most are with column. And like I found out for mine, most of mine were in column 1 and 2. But my two full-time guys, most of their was in 3 and 4. So now I sit here, it's like, and there's an issue, and I'm like, okay, well, why haven't you troubleshoot? It's like, okay, wait, maybe they did, but they maybe not done it the way I would have done it. They go at it differently. Doesn't mean they're not going to get to the same result. I got to let them work through their process. And again, it's technical. They got to work through their troubleshooting process, but they go about it differently. And so that's the soft skills. You have to understand how each other works, and what works well and what doesn't. So working as a team, you could just be co teammates. And if you don't understand how your other teammate works, your personality, you're going to get frustrated. You might think they're lazy. You might think they're unmotivated, but really they just do it differently than you do.
Yes, and that's one of the reasons why this personality type concept fascinates me so much, and it seems like this is a derivative of it, or example of it. It's so amazing that different people's brains just work differently, and we're not going to change that. So we have to figure out how to understand the person that you're working with and make those adjustments so that we can work together effectively. Um, I think that our industry and many of the people in this could benefit from very fundamental skills too, if you will. Organization, time management. We've talked about those a little bit. Psychology is critical, and we say this a lot, and we'll give the name drop to Joe Way. We're all in sales, so it's all of those things are just critical to be able to further yourself, unless you truly are just going to sit in a room and do one thing. But I don't think that many people listening to this podcast are looking for that, and many of those people are not the people that are going to they're very, very much in the minority. You have to be a super genius, I think, at one thing to be able to do that.
I agree. And going back to something you said in the beginning of that, a lot of people think the soft skills, oh, you'll learn those as you become a manager or a leader. And I think that's an incorrect way of looking at it. I actually read this in one of my books I've read, and it was talking about, I forget what president it was, but there was a president who was looking for a new director of labor. And he had an aide that he would bounce ideas off a lot. And he was talking to his aide, and her response was, my husband would be great for that position. You should hire him. And the president responded to her saying, well, whoever goes into the position, people need to be able to follow. And her response was, once you put him there, people will follow him. And then the offer goes into, that's not the way to look at it. You can't become a leader and then expect people to follow you, or become a manager. And then, all of a sudden, I'm going to know how to manage. Um, I kind of chopped this up. Something we just talked about with my team recently is you have to build your building blocks. You have to be able to handle the small tasks and do them well, so that when you are in the big task, they just come natural to you. Same thing as being a leader. You have to build your skills as a leader before you're actually put into a situation where you need to lead people. Because it's like thinking about troubleshooting something is, if you don't have that basic skills and you're thrown into a room and you say, make this work, and you have 100 people staring at you, the pressure's on, but you have no basis to go off of. So same thing with leadership. If someone throws you into management and go, okay, lead these 20 people, all eyes are on you, but you're frowning. You have no basis to build on, to go off of. So build those blocks now.
Absolutely. So what that comes down to is well, whose responsibility is that? I think the answer is probably going to be that it's shared. But um, I believe, and I think that I was like this even before I was in the role that I'm in, is that you're responsible for your own development, your own destiny. You're responsible for improving yourself. The our industry tends to be very focused on the developing the mostly technical skills. Employers, depending on your role, will give you probably very much weighted toward either the professional development or the technical, but not necessarily the blend.
Yeah.
So I guess from for people in our audience, what what are some ways for them to tip their toe into professional development? And sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and and that's part of it. But how do you get started?
Um, so to get started, I would say you have to find at least find one thing. Like I know in the beginning you mentioned how you and I both enjoyed reading. That was not always the case with me. Um, if anyone who hasn't followed me or doesn't know, this is more on my LinkedIn side than my Twitter side. Is about 2 years ago, I set out a personal goal because I was sitting there seeing folks like you, Steve, and other friends of mine and other contacts who were like, "Oh, I'm reading this book. I'm reading this book," and I felt like, I don't like reading. I don't enjoy I don't read, but I felt I hate saying this word, but I felt uneducated because I wasn't, up on it. So I set out a personal goal of reading 10 pages a night because my way when I used to read books, I had to either read a whole chapter or find a break in a book. And sometimes that's short, sometimes that's long. So it was very hard to be consistent. So I set that goal. I'll read 10 pages a night. That's an achievable, measurable goal. And since then, I've been through 17 books. And yes, when I moved, there was a couple months I didn't read, but I aim for 10 pages a night, and it's been going really well for 17 books. And now I've become a reader. There are people who now are taking suggestions, books that I've read. So that's one way. Another way is listening to podcasts. Like if you hear things on our podcast, I also listen to Coaching for Leaders, which is has nothing to do with AV. I also listen to United Soccer Coaches podcast. Again, has nothing to do with AV, but there's tidbits in those podcasts that allows me to apply. And I think that's one key takeaway I want anyone listening to is you don't have to 100% agree with everything you hear and everything you read. You don't have to be blind faith. You can have an enjoyable offer that you like or an enjoyable podcast you like, and not agree with everything they say. But you can take what you do agree with and build upon it with your own experience and your own knowledge and grow as a person.
But first off, congrats, and I've been following you through that journey, and I'm really proud to see that you've been doing that. And quite honestly, in full transparency, reading was never something that I came naturally to me. It just decided that I had a quest for knowledge, and that was a way to do it. But I, similarly to what you did, dedicated myself to say the people that I wanted to be like were readers, so I needed to also commit to that. But I've also talked to people that say that they're big readers and they're listening to books on audio. So there depends on what you like. For me, I find that more difficult because I like to pace myself differently and feel like but podcasts, I'll be the first to say I've gone to podcast university. I've learned so much about business through podcasts, and it's just it's amazing and there's no way I would have been able to read that much and consume that much that I've gotten through podcasts. So, it's all really good stuff. And I think also the thing that I'll add to that is put yourself in a circle of people that you want to be like, or that you look up to, or that you feel comfortable with, and and try to learn from them, because they're everybody that has a similar mindset is going to help lift up the group, and there's going to be value in that, and that's one of the reasons why we do this podcast.
Yes, definitely find your people that can help you, but I'll add on to that. Also find people outside your circle to build your circle and grow your circle. I know I use this example a lot, so I might even say it here, but I remember the first InfoComm I went down to, the one in Florida where, you and I hung out. And yeah, I was down there with a bunch of higher ed folks, or HEPMA folks, and love HEPMA, and I love my higher ed folks. But we went to an party, and as we walked into the room, they all went over to one area, and I went opposite way. And one of the members go, "Hey, James, we're over here." And I go, "I know." And they say, "Where are you going?" I'm like, "I'm networking." And I went over and I talked to Tim Albright. I talked to Megan Detta. I sat down with you and your wife. We talked to David Bussett. Like, I talked to people who I normally wouldn't talk to all the time, like my higher ed folks, people. And I made connections there, and I built relationship with folks. So sometimes you got to do that. Step out of your comfort zone. Have your comfort zone. You need your people. You need that support system, but don't be afraid to widen that circle and network out there. And going with what you said before, I agree with you. It's on us. I mentioned this on a recent AV and AM is, if you're not willing to put the work in, why do you expect your employer to?
I think that we should write that one in the sky, because I'm a big believer in that. It has to be a two-way street. And
Yep.
just to add on, AV and AM is another good one. There's many Sundays where I just feel very enriched, just being able to have a conversation with people that challenge me to think, and give me some new ideas. And I feel like that's another form of professional development, and whatever the topic is. So
Neat.
this has been
Yeah.
a great episode, and probably a good place for us to pause it. But I'm sure we'll come back to it, and love to hear not only what our audience thinks, but what is it that they do for professional development, and what suggestions do they have, and let's help each other grow and get better. James, how could people get in touch with you, and if you have any last words, um, and how can they keep up with what you're doing?
You can keep up with what I'm doing. You can follow me on X at AV_James King. Sunday mornings with AV and AM. You want to see my collection of books, they're over on the LinkedIn. So James King there. Do write for the Higher Ed Digital Magazine, the IT and AV column. So Google me, I'm out there.
And just to tack on to that, writing's another great opportunity. Like I I know that I wasn't a writer before I started doing some things and sharing thoughts, and I'll tell you, it's been so rewarding to be able to develop that skill, and I don't know, find that to be very enriching. So another great example. For me, you can reach me at Steve Greenblatt on social media, my company Control Concepts at controlconcepts.net. And of course, here at Ask the Programmer, you can um, listen to us on your favorite podcast players. You can see the video on YouTube. We also have a Twitter feed called it's Programmer Pod, right? AV Programmer Pod, sorry. And but reach out to us. There's many different ways to connect, and let us know what you think. And we want to have a variety of topics and guests. So your input and your questions will help fuel that. And with that, this has been Ask the Programmer.